Now, women's rights groups are protesting across the UK today, demanding the immediate application of the landmark Supreme Court decision. Earlier this year, the court ruled that the terms woman, man and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to biological sex at birth, which in practice means that transgender people have no access to the opposite sex, single-sex space, if you know what I mean. Do keep up at the back there. It's not actually that complicated. You're either a man or a woman. There, I said it. In any case, campaigners are saying that the ruling has not been applied in many areas yet. So joining me now is GB News reporter Sam Francis and GB News Scotland reporter Tony Maguire, who are covering these protests. Sam, let's come to you first. Sam, how's it going there?
Dawn, good afternoon. Yes, you join us live just outside of Downing Street, where the culmination of this women's rights and feminist activist protest has been taking place. 199 days to the day since that Supreme Court ruling was passed, defining a woman by biological sex at birth and no longer by gender identity. That means, therefore, that transgender women are excluded. Now, the women behind me, and men indeed, gathered. We'll just take a look, in fact, at some of the flags that you can see here. One stating that the definition of a woman is indeed an adult human female. Well, they are saying today that they still believe, despite the passing of that 199 days since the Supreme Court ruling, that they are angry, frustrated that there has been no movement, no change, no action by the government, by institutions, and indeed by public spaces, such as public toilets, hospitals, sports clubs and venues. And they have just been speaking here at this gathering, saying that even in prison, they believe that the government are culpable and responsible for still locking up women with men. Now, this demonstration has been centred down here in Parliament Square, and we wandered around with this group of protesters over to a counter-protester where my colleague Connie Shaw spoke to one of the trans activists who said that this Supreme Court ruling means that trans people no longer feel safe in their own country.
The reality of the situation is that trans women, not men, trans women and other trans people are not predators. The statistics show us over and over again that trans women are not predators.
But isn't it 2/3 of trans women in prison have been convicted of at least one sex offence? What do you say to that?
That statistic is misleading. That is sexual crimes. A lot of that is things like sex work. It is not sex predators.
Well, as you can hear there, this ruling from the Supreme Court and the 199 days that have now passed is causing some real division between both pro and anti-campaigners gathering here today. I believe we can, in fact, show you some footage that we took earlier this morning as the counter-protesters began to gather. There was a slight scuffle with police. You can just about make out there one of the protesters being arrested. So far, we believe just one counter-protester from those trans activists arrested after they took or attacked one of the other broadcasters' camera equipment at that protest. And it is worth also noting some aggressive approach online from the trans activists, saying on a social media post, and I quote here, that they say, "Don't talk to police, bring a mask and bring your rage to today's protests." So a quite stark difference between the approach of both campaign groups today. But I believe we can now cross over to Tony Maguire, who's in Scotland, where another protest is also taking place today, marking these 199 days.
We're living in a time of what feels like pretty significant social change, and it makes us question things that we've even taken for granted for decades. And one of those at the moment that people are wondering about is actually money. Is the money in your bank account safe? Should you be investing elsewhere? Are we looking at a potential global crash? What will it mean for your savings? Is there a way that you could be using your money that might be outside of government control even? Well, TallyMoney is potentially one solution. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. What is TallyMoney?
Well, at TallyMoney, you basically get gold you can spend. So we give people an individual account in their name, everyday account. They get a sort code, an account number. They use that account just like they would pounds from their bank, but it's milligrams of gold that we brand as Tally.
Okay. Why would you do that, though? What is the benefit to the customer instead of just having a normal pound sterling account?
Gold's performance against the pound is above 11% per annum over the last 25 years on average. but we still need money in our daily lives. And we have savings. We know that it's good common sense and prudent to save up for things, not just live in credit. You know, whether it's a holiday or a rainy day, your retirement planning, you need to have money in your life, basically, that you can rely on, that's dependable, that nobody meddles with, that nobody can weaponise against you, which is another element of government control when it's the government currency, which we could talk about another time. And it should be pretty simple and straightforward. And that's what we deliver at Tally. And really, we just want people to feel safe and happy with their money. There was a time when the bigger your bank balance, the more confident you felt. Now it's like, I need to do something with it. I can't leave it there. In Tally, you can.
Okay, brilliant. Cameron Parry from TallyMoney, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bev.
Where you are.
Yeah, good afternoon. Well, we're here in Edinburgh, you know, and as we've been discussing today, 199 days since that Supreme Court decision, and it sounds like it's a bit different here in Edinburgh because there's about a 200-metre void between the women's rights campaigners and the pro-trans group campaigners. But as we've seen, you know, we've tried to engage with some of the people here. Not many of them fans of the channel, as you might imagine, but what we've been just trying to do here is, this is very much still a kind of a two-team issue. There's very much a real sense of really despair from a lot of the trans rights activists who feel the Supreme Court decision was not the right decision, and that, of course, this has actually been a downgrade of their rights. Now, we heard earlier from the women's rights campaigners, and of course, among them was actually one of the journalists from the Byline Times, you know, and it was a bit of an odd interaction. We heard there from Sam about what some of the instructions were about don't engage with police and covering the face, you know, and that journalist for the Byline Times was writing down her responses for the police. But as we can see here, there's a lot of flags and there's a lot of passion. I think it's worth to say on both sides here, you know, and this has been rumbling on for so long in Scotland, the issue since the Gender Recognition Reform Bill, that this isn't even really so much about right or wrong anymore. This is very much about just core beliefs and rights, and very much both sides here. We've got lots more flags. They're not particularly keen on cameras or photographers seeing what's going on in the protest here or anywhere. Very many of them swarmed with the flags, but right the way along we can see people who are trying to share their views and talk to people. But of course this is all really down because 199 days ago that Supreme Court decision was made, and since that time there haven't been any movements. We've had some guidance updates for schools, but nothing for prisons, and hardly anything at all for NH Health Board. So women are over at the other side of the Parliament Square trying to get the Scottish Government to get moving.
Tony, thank you very much. That's GB News Scotland reporter Tony Maguire there for her in Edinburgh at the women's protest. The one thing I always want to ask is, if you feel you're on the side of right and your campaign is one that we should be listening to and we should be listening to your voices, why are you wearing masks? Why are you covering your faces? I didn't see any women there talking about the rights of women for their single-sex bases wearing a mask. Did you? Any case. We will be going back to that later on throughout the day to see, bring you any updates on that one.